wants you on the team. Explore iconic football towns, Chicago, Green Bay, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and make memories with fellow Irish NFL fans on the trip of a lifetime. We've partnered with Bernard Hayes Travel, a trusted travel partner with over 30 years experience. We look after everything: flights, accommodation, transfers, match tickets, social events, and everything in between. An unforgettable experience. Picture yourself in the stands at Soldier Field, Lambeau, or MetLife, roaring on your team. Register your interest today at irishnflshow.com/tours. Don't just watch the game, live it.
Well, it's a wonderful life for the Rams and Broncos, who already have sealed playoff spots. Many teams know they will be spending the postseason home alone, and there are a few still fighting to give hope for the diehard fan. Yes, I'm putting diehard in my Christmas movie pun section. Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 16 preview, brought to you in association with QuinnBet. We know it's Christmas when we have NFL football to look forward to on Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to keep us company with all actions for us to look forward to. Kieran O'Donovan previewed tonight's Thursday night football matchup between the Rams and Seahawks. Huge game there on Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic. Check that out if you're watching us live on on Facebook, irishnflshow.com, or on Twitter. Thank you very much for joining us. But for now, as the world awaits presents from the North Pole, I am graced by the presence of North Dublin's Brian O'Leary and North Florida's Kieran Boyle to preview the remaining 15 games. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you. And we start on Saturday night, our time, Saturday afternoon, your time, of course, Kieran, as the Eagles travel to Landover, Maryland, in what is a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. But unlike last year, I think this seems like a bit less of a challenge for the Eagles, Kieran. And the Eagles, let's be fair about this, they had an 0-3 run coming into last week's game against the Raiders. The Raiders, were sort of gifted them a reset game to sort of get things back going. And they will really want to make sure that they sort of get the business done here pretty early and try to move themselves closer towards winning the NFC East.
Yeah, and the Raiders are the get right of all get right games. I mean, all the doom and gloom that surrounded Philly over the last, probably month or so is just vanished away with the dog walk of the Raiders. The Raiders are a terrible team. We know that. They're not going, they're not competitive at all right now. But, the Eagles got back.
Commanders, lads, Commanders.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Commanders. Sorry.
They're as bad as the Raiders.
Let's get back to the Commanders. So, the Commanders are, they're not going to be much of a trouble for this Eagles team. I mean, the Eagles offense got back on track. Hurts had his usual, 175 yards. He had a bunch of touchdowns. He got the rest of the team involved. But the Eagles are looking past this game. They're not looking at this Commanders team as any much of any kind of a challenge. Daniels is done for the rest of the year. They're putting him in storage. Obviously, Ertz is done, and they're just lacking weapons across the field. Krosky, Merritt is probably, and scary Terry McLaurin's probably about all they got, and the Eagles will have more than enough on defense to take care of those two. It's for me, it's the Eagles. They're just looking to put points on this team and just get more confidence and get more reps for this offense, and maybe get the ball over to AJ Brown a little bit more and pat his ego as we go into the business end. They're looking past this game. I mean, I know they still have the Commanders to play before the end of the season. They got the Bills coming up just after Christmas as well. But the division's pretty much wrapped up. The line is only -6. I think it should be double that at least. I think the Commanders are shutting things down until next year, and this Eagles team will have very little difficulty. There'll be a lot of Saquon early, and they'll probably pull him in the third quarter because there's a lot bigger games coming down the track.
Brian, it's interesting with the Eagles because they've been to New York and they lost to the Giants. They've been to Dallas and they've lost to the Cowboys. This is, of course, the third road game they have to play against divisional opponents. We see this all the time in the league. Divisional opponents can spring a surprise. Not saying that those two results were necessarily a surprise in the context of when they happen here, but if the Commanders were to win this one, it would be a bit of a shock, and the Eagles still need to come in focus into this matchup here.
I'm glad you threw that one into the mix, Shane, because that's the last time the New York Giants won a football game, and me and Kieran went at it. Who would have thought that night we'd be walking out MetLife? Seemed probably arguably the last victory of the season. I'm not going to go down that road, Shane, and I don't think many people will in terms of, a Commanders victory and there's a shutout this year on the road for the Eagles. I think Kieran's on the right track here. I think the Eagles have been inconsistent. We know that over the course of the season, and they're winning the division by default. They haven't played at the level in which we've seen last year. However, this is kind of feels to me like the next few weeks are usually significant for this team, and not necessarily because they are in the sweepstakes to go to the Super Bowl. People may think, okay, they get into the race, maybe they've got a real opportunity. I think most of us would say they're going to be up against it this year. But they got to put some form together going into the playoffs. We've seen teams similar to the Eagles. Actually, the Eagles 2 years ago, they went into the Bucs and they were taken care of because the form had dipped at that stage of the season. They got it right last weekend against a very poor Raiders team. We joked about are they as bad as the Commanders? Probably not. The Commanders will probably give them a test, but I think they've got to find a way, and I think they've got to be comprehensive in putting this victory away. And I think they need to get their own game be more effective. Saquon Barkley has not been at the level in which we saw last year. I don't know if it's an inconsistency in the line, whether he's just not playing at the same level, whether he's banged up with injuries and we're not really aware of it. Jalen Hurts looks completely off this season. Even that LA game 2 weeks ago on the Monday Night Football, numerous turnovers. He just doesn't seem to be reading the situation correctly the way we've seen last year. But in saying that, and we've been here before with a team like the Eagles, if they find a way to get into the playoffs and can come into the playoffs with a bit of form, they're a dangerous outfit. I think they need to run the table to really put themselves in a position to be going into the playoffs with confidence. They will get that home game in the playoffs, but the way this season's played out, it wouldn't be against the realms of possibility someone goes and beats them. They'll win this game. They'll probably win it comfortably, but it's an eye opener to see how they go about this game at the weekend.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling a lot of people in America will be flicked over to watch Tulane and Ole Miss for a certain chunk of this game. Like you said, I think the Eagles might have this one sewn up pretty early. I mean, it will be the most Philadelphia one for them to have a sort of mini crisis mid-season and to have a quietly good end of season before the playoffs. So for that reason, I think the Eagles will win. But the really big one on Saturday night, guys, is a rematch of a game we saw 2 weeks ago as the Green Bay Packers go to Chicago to play the Bears. It feels like only 2 weeks ago we were talking about one of the greatest late window games that we've seen in recent times. So much has changed here, especially when it comes to the feeling around the Bears. They felt good even though they came away with a loss in that game in Lambeau. And the Packers are dealing with a lot of injuries here. They're still coming into as 1-point favorites into Soldier Field, Brian. Really difficult to try and put a pin as to what the real difference maker is going to be here, but a lot of it is going to be at the door of Caleb Williams trying to make sure that he performs well in two halves of football and not just the second half, as is the case when they face off against each other 2 weeks ago at Lambeau Field. Yeah,
a huge blow for the Bears in the last couple of hours. It's been confirmed that Dunze is out, and the wide receiver from the last rookie draft, Burden, he's also out. So that's a huge, it's going to be a burden on Caleb Williams, isn't it? Pardon the pun. How he's going to navigate an offensive plan against his Packers team. Like, we're 2 weeks removed from a game which many of us felt that the Bears had there for the taking. Run the ball so effectively towards the back end of the game, and I still question whether they should have done that in that particular fourth round play. It's probably quite some time since we've seen a Bears team really, really put it up to the Packers. I know there's been kind of just one or two games here and there where it looked like the Bears were going to get over the line, and they won that Week 18 game last year where there was nothing on it in Green Bay. But this strikes me as something different about the Bears team. This is a huge opportunity. We do win this to be a game and a half ahead of the Packers with 2 games to go. And the Packers right now are slightly reeling from last week's loss because it wasn't just necessarily about the fact that they gave up a double-digit lead and they allowed the Broncos to come back. They've lost Micah Parsons for the season. Will we see that defense step up to the level in which they need to do to kind of cover off what Micah Parsons was doing? I know we've read numerous reports on the fact that, look, the Packers have been in the playoffs the last couple of years without Micah Parsons, but he's become an X factor. He's become a huge difference to this team over the course of the season. And I wonder, is it a monumental blow to this team to lose a player of that magnitude? As well as that, we don't know how fit Watson's going to be. It looks like he's on the right side in terms of he hasn't suffered any long-term prognosis of an injury, but it's still an injury in itself. And the inconsistency for me is still there of whether the Packers can put 4 quarters together. How many times have we really seen that this season? They've won games because they've had really explosive plays. Thanksgiving, the last game against the Bears. Last week, Kieran O'Donnell was frustrated with the fact that they started out well, got sloppy, came back again. I'm going Bears. I think the tide is turning in this division. I think it's the Bears division to win. I think there's bigger games still ahead for the Bears because they got to go to 49ers. They got to try and knock off the Lions in the last game of the season, to secure that division. But Saturday night, Soldier Field, I think this is arguably one of the biggest games we've had in years in this division, and I think the Bears are going to come out the right side of it.
Yeah, it's probably one of the biggest games we've had in Chicago in a very long time as well, in terms of just what it means, not only in terms of like this so-called great rivalry that we always talk about, but of course, in terms of how the power shift in this division. And when I'm looking at this one, and I'm actually quite worried about the Packers, not only because of their inconsistency, but if you'd actually just look at, and there's a lot of areas in which they just don't look set up. I mean, their defense gave up over 300 yards to Bo Nix last week at 4 touchdowns. And that's, with the caveat that Bo Nix played a very good game last week, what I would argue is probably the best game of his career, definitely the best game of his NFL career, I thought, in terms of how well Bo Nix played against the Packers last week. But still, giving up over 300, they didn't get a sack, they didn't get an interception. The Broncos were 4-4 in the red zone last week. They allowed Nix to run it a lot. The run defense is better than their pass defense, but this is coming up against a Bears team whose pass offense seems to be getting a little bit sharper every week. As you saw last week, Caleb Williams, the first time this season, has been over 60% in terms of his pass completion rate. His accuracy is just getting a little bit better and better as we keep going on. I think 112 QB rating against the Browns last week. And I know, look, it's the Browns, but it's that Browns defense, which is still a pretty good unit to try and flex your muscles against. You look at the injuries that we're looking at in Green Bay. Watson has been limited in practice. Matthew Golden seems to have a problem with his wrist. Savion Williams has a problem with his foot. Dontayvion Wicks has a problem with his ankle. Josh Weil and Jaden Reed have other problems as well. And Zach Tom, the offensive line, has not been participating as well. There's a really, really banged up feel to this Packers team. And look, the Bears, as you outlined already, Brian, have a lot of physical games to come up ahead of them between going to Santa Clara and then facing against the Lions in the last game of the week. This is going to be a physical game as well. But the Bears are 5-1 at home. DeAndre Swift has been consistent. Kyle Monungai we've seen as being more of a breakout star. They can get the run game going. They can get the pass game going. Their offense has been able to put up over 24 points in 5 of the last 7 games, and they're pretty efficient in the red zone. And I think that their game planning will be pretty efficient as well. So I really like the Bears in this one. I said that 2 weeks ago, but I was in Lambeau Field with different conditions, and the Bears still played pretty well there. I think they will have the edge here. So I'm going against the Packers here, even though they are coming into this as 1-point favorites, according to those in Vegas. Kieran.
Yeah, war of attrition here, injuries on both sides. I'm picking the Bears purely because they're at home, and based on the performance last week. Caleb had a real nice game. It was good to see. So I'm picking the Bears.
Sunday, now we move on to an 6 o'clock window. The Buffalo Bills, who just come off a really big momentum swing victory in Foxborough, Massachusetts, now travel to Cleveland, Ohio, as they face the Browns. I'm looking at this one, and look, we could talk about Shedeur and to the extent to which that he's trying to play for this job. We could talk about the fact that the Cleveland Browns defense is pretty strong, and Myles Garrett is obviously, the main storyline behind that is how many sacks is he going to get to try and build up towards his way, or it's having a record that maybe nobody might be able to beat depending on how the season goes here. But I think the important thing for the Bills is that after coming up against the Patriots last week, and they have a couple of difficult challenges coming ahead between now and the end of the year, they still need to keep pressure on. I don't foresee them going in to Cleveland and dropping this one. Josh Allen and the run game as last week, when they got going, they had that 5 touchdown stream. They managed to get things going in a way that they were able to click, that it wasn't just Josh Allen doing everything by himself. It was that kind of complementary offense that was able to pick out the right situations at the right time. The run game worked, the offensive line worked, the passing game worked. And I just, sometimes with these teams, when they get into this December mode, they really start to click into gear here. And I think the Bills are good for their 10-point favorite tags going in to Cleveland here. Kieran.
I think this a little different to the Eagles-Commanders game. I think this line better reflects the outcome of this challenge. I mean, the Browns, we talk every week. I mean, there's nothing on offense. I mean, the last 3 games, they've totaled 40 points, and 29 of those was against the Titans. So I don't think the Bills are scared in any way of this offense. The only thing for the Bills is going to be complacence. They're going into a Browns team that's, Garrett's going for that sack record. We'll have to wait and see how much that D wants to keep fighting, because they've been slogging since early September, and there's nothing to play for right now. We're getting into late December. How much are they going to show up? I'm concerned for the Bills in one regard, and that's their ability to kind of string, consecutive good performances together. They have 4 games where they've scored less than 20 points, and at this stage of the game, or even at this stage of the season, it's about getting hot. It's about firing on all cylinders. It's about finishing December strong and going into January with good momentum. And obviously the Bills are a December team. They're, Allen is a superstar in December. So with all that said, I don't think the Browns are going to pose much of a threat to this Bills team. They're looking forward probably to the Eagles game after this. I mean, Shedeur had a nightmare last week. This offense for the Browns can't do much. It's Isaiah Bond, Jerry Jeudy, and Judkins on the ground. But it's going to really come down to how much the Bills want to run the ball and how much the Browns D can stop them. I'm sure Garrett will get a sack or two, and it'll look great. But it's another year for him of just padding his own personal stats as opposed to the team stats. So the only other thing I can think of for the Bills is maybe trying to work out this passing game, because at this stage it's Cook and Allen on the ground, and do we have a lot of faith in Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman even to stretch that field? So that's probably almost like a scrimmage for the Bills. Maybe the Browns, they're a bad team, and it just remains to be seen what kind of defense shows up for the Browns. But this will be an easy win for the Bills.
Brian?
From Soldier Field to Buffalo Soldier, Shane, it's a Bills victory. This is a huge part of the season now, and where they may have taken teams lightly, like the Dolphins early in the season and lost, and the Falcons, and even the Texans, this game on the road won't be a problem. They will win this game comprehensively. Bills win.
What the LA Chargers and Dallas Cowboys have in common is they were both complicit in the killing of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Cowboys putting the knife in Thanksgiving, and the Chargers giving it the final twist on Sunday just gone. The Chargers now go to Dallas. Dallas 2-point favorites in this one. The Chargers very much in the hunt for a wildcard spot in the AFC. The Cowboys have dropped off in pace the last couple of weeks, but they're not completely out of the woods yet. Brian, how do you see this game going?
This is a tricky one, isn't it? It's kind of It's kind of reflective of what the line is with QuinnBet. Like, Cowboys are slight favourites, which I found a little bit bizarre. Bearing in mind, the Chargers for me have kind of evolved over the course of the season to a Harbaugh team. They are now winning games that we would have expected them to lose in the past. Even last week, I felt that was a game which the Chiefs would win. Maybe with the exception of that Jaguars game where they got completely blown out on the road, and a lot of people have them favourite to win that game. That's probably been the one game this season where we've looked at them and go, is that the Chargers evolved? The Cowboys, I can't work them out, Shane, because I was reasonably high on making a bit of a run. I thought they'd go into Detroit and put it up to them. They did, and then last weekend on a Sunday Night Football, when everyone, including ourselves, had all selected the Cowboys to win, they lay an egg and allow JJ McCarthy to go up and down the field on throughout the night. I think inevitably what we've come to taken for granted now is this Cowboys defense is just not good this season. Yes, there's been some bright spots bringing in the Quinn Williams in the trade. He's a fantastic player, and in the long term, he probably will be a great addition. And he kind of got things rolling slightly for a couple of weeks, but what I think we've seen is they've transitioned back to what we've seen earlier in the season, which is a team and a secondary that just can't cover receivers. And in fairness to the Chargers, in their own way, Keelan Allen has done well in the return there. McConkey's a great player. Vidal has stepped up when they've had injuries to running backs. Like, they've got all the players there. The rookie tight end has had a fantastic season. For me, it's about, does Justin Herbert hold up? Does this arm? You kind of feel like, yeah, it's held up for the last 2 weeks, and yeah, and they've overcome it on the Monday Night Football against the Eagles last week. But you have to be concerned as a Chargers fan that he's playing with this injury, which is not really fruitful for a long, in terms of what you believe is going to happen over the course of the season. The Chargers need this game really badly. They've got to go in. They're on the cusp of making the playoffs again. And for the Cowboys, I know Jerry Jones has come out this week and said, we're not going to tank. I don't think they're very much in the sweepstakes for tanking in the sense of getting into the top 5, but obviously clearly their season is over. They'll probably put up some high numbers. It feels like a really high scoring type of game. But I think the Chargers need it more, and I think the Chargers come out the right side of it. So it feels to me like a late drive field goal kind of game, but the Chargers get out the right side of it. Big win for the Chargers.
One of my favorite stats of this game is if you actually look at the NFL thing, the playoff picture, to say that if the Cowboys win this game, they still only have a 2% chance of making the playoffs, which is just kind of a funny state of affairs as to where they're in. But for the Chargers, Kieran, it's interesting. Justin Herbert is playing with that broken left hand, as Kieran was saying, and their offensive line has the highest pressure rate allowed of 2025. If they let pressure get on top of him, he could be really in danger of either making mistakes or getting himself seriously hurt. Now, that Cowboys defense might be the ones to put it up for it. I'm sure they'll definitely give it a go here in Dallas.
Yeah, and it's what's weird is, the Chargers have been winning in spite of themselves almost. I mean, Herbert's come up against much tougher teams and come out on top. I mean, with that hand injury, and like Brian said, this Cowboys defense is it's starting to regress. They had a little bit of a bump when they got Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams, but they've kind of regressed back to where they were the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. But I mean, this Chargers team, I mean, you want to kind of put them down, and you want to say, they're not up to it, but they've won 6 of the last 7. And they're allowing an average of 20.3 points per game, and they should lean on the run game, because what we've seen the last couple of games is a limited offense, kind of vertically. But what they've done is it's been Herbert and a cloud of dust, and Herbert and a cloud of dust, and they've just been grinding out yards and grinding out performances, not lighting up the scoreboard in any way. I mean, that's the thing. If this turns into a shootout early, I can't see the Chargers keeping pace with this Cowboys offense. They've had what they've done in the last couple of games, especially against the Chiefs. They've just used these long drives with Herbert just grinding out yards just to chew the clock up. They've run the ball 110 times and passed 75 in the last 3 games. So that shows you the kind of limited options they have out wide. Oronde Gadsden, son of the former players, he's been doing good. Obviously, McConkey's a weapon. But I can only see the Chargers kind of keeping on the ground against this very suspect, like a lot of teams in the league, very suspect run D from the Cowboys. But for me, the Cowboys have too much on offense. When you kind of look at both teams and how they stack up on offense, the Cowboys for me have got too much. And Dak has been playing, any other season people will be talking about how well Dak's been playing. He's been let down by the defense. The O-line has definitely showed up for him in the last month. But I mean, Dak has been, what you need from him, just spraying the ball out left, right, and center, working with his legs, using those 2 power wide receivers that he has. And I think that's what's going to come down to. I just think with Pickens and Lamb, that's just too much for this Chargers team to overcome. I think the Chargers will keep it tight the first half. But I mean, with this team, again, Cowboys got nothing to lose. They want to put a show on for Jerry. Again, players playing for their future careers with the Cowboys. I can lighten it up, maybe putting 30 points, and the Chargers kind of struggling to keep with them. They've done it. They've kept a lot of teams in check the last month or so. But I think when this Cowboys team, especially the offense, when they get going, there's not a huge amount of teams that can stick with them, notwithstanding last week. But I think this Cowboys offense is going to have too much for them. And I think the Chargers, I don't want to call it luck. They have rode their luck a lot in the last month, but I think it kind of stops. And I think the Cowboys are going to win at home.
The luck stops here. Yeah, I believe the Cowboys are going to win that game as well. We move on to a match with the NFC South. What do these teams have in common? The Buccaneers and the Panthers have both lost to the Saints in the last 2 weeks. The Buccaneers also lost to the Falcons last week as well. It seems like neither of these teams really want to try and take grasp of this division. Well, luckily they get to face off against each other twice in the last 2 weeks for us to really find out who gets a chance to win the NFC South. What I find interesting about this particular matchup here, the Bucs are coming into Carolina as 3-point favorites. Kind of understandable, considering that Baker Mayfield has a 5-0 record against Carolina in his career. 4 of those wins coming as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. An interesting stat. The Bucs offense wasn't really at fault as much as their defense was for that loss against Atlanta on Thursday Night Football last week. They were 3 for 3 in the red zone. Now, Baker, in fairness, his completion rate wasn't great. His completion rate actually hasn't been great in 4 of the last 5 games. He's been taking a lot of sacks, and Bucky Irving, as a running back, hasn't been getting a lot of bang for his buck. He's been, I think, in the 3.8 yards per carry mark in the last 3 games, which definitely, doesn't give you a hell of a lot of confidence that the Buccaneers offense is going to be the side of the ball that's going to take control of this game. But I'm even less confident, and I'm usually, somebody who is banging the drums for the Panthers, and I'm generally being quite high on what they've been able to do. But I realize that in a lot of key areas, this is the problem against New Orleans last week. The defense may be able to hold up, their offensive line may be able to hold up, but they're relying too much on that aspect of their game, and they're being too conservative in what they're doing. It really makes you think as to whether Bryce Young really is the answer, because anytime they've won sort of with him, it hasn't been because he's been explosive. It's because they've found a way to make him serviceable with other aspects of the game being rigid and being able to work effectively. I mean, they rarely pass or do play action plays on first down. They don't go for deep targets unless they really have to. They scored under 18 points in 4 of their last 6 games. I just have less trust in them to go and try and put up the points that you probably need against a Baker Mayfield team who, look, I think matches up well against this team. That loss against the Falcons, look, when you talk about these divisional games, you have to step back and ask, these are teams that know each other intimately. The difference in a lot of these games is actually matchups and the fact that some teams just play well against other teams. The Saints have always put in good games against the Panthers, as they did last week and got a win. The Falcons have beaten the Buccaneers 3 times in the last 4 games that they've played, hence why they bet the Buccaneers last week. The Buccaneers generally tend to beat the Panthers. I think they're the better team overall. They're the better offense overall. And neither of these defenses is strong enough to make me think that they can fully take control of the game. The Panthers may be slightly stronger on their side because they got a lot of sacks against the Saints last week, considering that the Buccaneers, let the Falcons go 4 for 4 in the red zone. But who are you putting your money on? You're putting your money on Baker and co. to be a bit more aggressive, be that more swashbuckling style, and play the kind of offensive attacking football that makes you deserving of a spot in the playoffs, which I just don't expect to come from Bryce Young. Excuse me. So for that reason, I'm going for the Buccaneers to win this one. Kieran.
Brutal weekend for both teams last week. Just falling over each other, getting to the finish line. Huge implications for not just the end of the season, but next season too. Todd Bowles, his future, if they take a nosedive, that could be it for him. I mean, we saw him having a meltdown at the podium last week. He's obviously furious with this team. We saw Mike Evans furious in the tunnel because they knew they'd just missed a huge opportunity. I had the Panthers getting 8 wins at the start of the season, and I'm still going to stick with that. I think with their finish of the season, they got the Bucs again, and they have the Seahawks. So that's a tough end of the season. I do like this Bucs team to finish strong. I think Baker's a great rallier. He's gritty. He's the kind of player to rally this team around. They got the weapons. I mean, they got the run game. They got Tucker, Bucky Irvin, and Rashad White. That's three guys who can run the rock. And obviously they got Ibuka. Mike Evans is back. Godwin is back. So, I mean, they got much more weapons, much more potent weapons for me than the Panthers have. I think the Panthers have just about maxed out what they had this season. The other question for Canales is, what do we do with Bryce Young? I've said it before. I don't see him as a franchise quarterback. And if the Panthers are going to kind of build on the momentum that they've had this year with, again, solid free agency signings, great draft, they're obviously a huge amount better than they were last year. They're not going to want to regress next year. I don't think Bryce Young is the guy that's going to keep him moving and get him to the next stage. So, but for him, he's going to want to put on a huge performance the last 3 games and show Canales that he's got something to prove and he's got something in the tank that can bring this team forward. I think for me, I think the fury of Bowles last week, I mean, you never really see him that animated, but I think Baker is the kind of guy that's going to rally this team. He's been in positions like this before, especially with Oklahoma in college. He brought that team up at a scruff of its neck. They beat Ohio State in a huge game, so he's used to the big game when they got to get the big win. And I think with the weapons I outlined for Tampa, I think they have too much for this Panthers team. That is, I don't say they've overreached, but I think they've just about kind of maxed out their ability for this season. And I think that Tampa D, especially Vita Vea, is going to just galvanize the rest of that defense. I mean, the other thing with the Panthers is since October 19th, their problem is since October 19th against the Jets, it's win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, and the loss against the Saints. So they just can't get anything together. And I really fear for them right now. I think Young's in for a torrid time. I know it's at home for the Panthers, but I really see the Bucs pulling away from this with probably a 6-point win when all is said and done.
Brian.
I'll oppose the both of you. I think the Panthers are on the right side of this. I think as inconsistent as they've been at home, they can be a very high-scoring, expansive offense. And I think the Bucs defense, from what I've seen over the last few weeks, has been a real concern. I will go with the Panthers. I don't think necessarily it's an upset either. Panthers to win.
Ooh, he's bringing the spice. Right, we're going to finish off with a couple of quick picks before we take a break. Chiefs. Yes, the Chiefs are in the quick pick section. They're going to Tennessee. Let's see what Gardner Minshew could do. I'm backing the Chiefs to win this one. Brian.
I think Cam Ward and the Titans turn over the Chiefs in this one. They played well offensively over the last few weeks. I think it continues. They win this game. Gardner Minshew doesn't do the business for the Chiefs. Titans.
Stranger things have happened, I guess. Kieran?
Yeah, even with Minshew, the Titans are garbage. I'll still take the Chiefs.
And then we have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to the Miami Dolphins, who will not be playing Tua Tagovailoa, but the Tagovailoa era has come to an end. Aha, that's a terrible pun I've been saving for 3 days. I tell you, when I look at this one, right? I mean, there's comments coming in now about from when Joe Burrow, he had another press conference. Who seems like he just doesn't know whether he wants to keep playing football in the future. And we're backed by QuinnBet. I'm betting on Quinn Ewers. Give me the Miami Dolphins. Brian.
I was on the Dolphins until they made this change this week. I think the Bengals will come out the right side of this game. Bengals.
And Kieran?
As someone who watched Ewers at college, he is not a NFL level quarterback. Give me Cincy.
Fair enough. Right, we'll take a quick break.
Great odds. You're in control. You always bet responsibly. And you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
Before we start talking about some of the key games in the 9 o'clock window, we'd like to kick off our second segment, brought to you by Dunes and Drams, by talking about the two teams from New York. Will there be a fairy tale in New York as we come up to Christmas week? The New York Jets go to the New Orleans Saints. I'm backing the Jets to win this one, just for the sake of it. Nobody else seems to be backing the Jets. I think that maybe this might be the game they finally get an interception from Tyler Shough, who's been taking a lot of sacks, even though he has been impressive the last couple of weeks. That is an upset for a reason, but I think it could happen. Brian?
I think you've been to too many parties, Shane, and you're a bit shook. Shook it up on Sunday. It's a Saints victory for me.
And Kieran?
I'm not picking the Jets.
Very good. Well, here's the question. Are you picking the Giants? They're hosting the Minnesota Vikings as well on Sunday.
Nope.
Brian, are you picking the Giants?
Giants better not do what I think they're going to do on Sunday week and beat those Raiders and cost us that fourth pick in the draft and potentially a big haul in the future. In this game, I think JJ McCarthy gets another victory for the Vikings. It's the Vikings victory for me on Sunday.
What was it last year? Was it the game against the Colts that the Giants won?
Yes. Second last game of the season. It has familiarities. It's coming. We know it's coming.
Too funny. Moving to the 9 o'clock window, the Jets of the South, as Kieran likes to call them, plays against the Dolphins of the West, as Ben Costello calls them. The Atlanta Falcons traveling to the Arizona Cardinals. I really don't know who to pick here because I have no confidence in any of these teams, but I have a bit more confidence in the Falcons, considering the performance that Kirk Cousins put up on Thursday Night Football last week and the fact of a bit more rest. So I'm going for Atlanta here. Brian?
One of the most frustrating teams offensively that's in the league for Falcons fans because they've got all the talent. Drake London has been a huge loss, but I think on Sunday they again get another victory. It's the Falcons for me.
And Kieran?
Yep, Falcons for me as well.
We move into the big time now as the Jacksonville Jaguars travel to Mile High Stadium. Two of the hottest offenses in the league, as you guys have been talking about on Monday when we came off. Of course, the Broncos doing so against the Packers last week. The Jags doing, managing to build in to the season since, of course, Kieran, you saw them live playing against the Colts a couple of weeks ago. I'll start with you, Kieran, on this. I mean, if the Jags really want to prove themselves to be super serious about how far they can possibly go in the playoffs, they will go into the current number 1 seed holders and try to show that Trevor Lawrence is playing strong football in the way that he wasn't, 5 or 6 weeks ago. This is definitely a tough challenge, but one that I think some people are expecting at least some good offensive football from them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are high on the Jags right now, and rightly so. I mean, this is a team that's unrecognizable from, going back to Urban even 4 or 5 years ago, Urban Meyer, and there's some really lean stretches with Doug Peterson. Liam Cohen's done a hell of a job, and his coordinators Adinsky and Campanelli as well. They've resurrected this Jags team, and I know that Lawrence has played well. I want to temper all that by the fact that they haven't played a lot of great teams. I mean, they just got past the Cards. They've had the Jets in. They beat a Colts team that gave up as soon as they hit the field. So there's been a dearth of challenges to the Jags. I know they put up some great points. That they got the number 1 run defense. The offense is humming. Lawrence has not turned the ball over. ETN and Tootin, well, Tootin's going to be injured, so they're going to have DJ Dallas in as a kind of a complimentary runner. But obviously the Jags are a great story right now. They're playing really well. I'm just pumping the brakes a lot because I'm concerned about the level of play, level of competition they've been up against. I think it's kind of amplified and maybe inflated some of their figures. But B, they're going up against a Broncos team that that's they're a different beast. 11 straight wins. They're the last unbeaten team at home this season. We know all about the defense, what they have out there. Hufanga, Surtain. It's just a defense that scares a lot of teams. And I think the Jags, I know that their confidence is sky high, but you're going into Denver and you're going into a team that's eking out wins. I mean, we talked about the Chiefs last year and how they were able to get these scramble over the line and get a last minute winner. Well, the Broncos are doing the exact same thing. They're just about getting over the line in most of these games. 6 of the last 11 games have been decided by 3 points or fewer. They got the number 2 rushing defense. I know the Jags have the number 1 rushing defense. There's a lot of factors at play there. I think it's going to be difficult for the Jags to kind of get into the rhythm that they've been in the last number of weeks. I think that this Denver defense is going to rush and harry Lawrence, who does not like any kind of pressure at all. And I know that after what the Broncos did against Green Bay, I think he's in for a tough time too. So I think I'd be a little bit worried with Lawrence and his ball security. I think the fact that Tootin is out is going to put more responsibility on ETN to run the ball. Like I said, they've got this guy DJ Dallas coming in. I mean, he's a practice squad guy. So how many carries is he going to have? The other thing that worries me is Lawrence is not a million miles away from the player that he was maybe 5 week 6, turning the ball over, fumbles, overthrowing, and ETN we know has got a problem with fumbles too. So I think with the added pressure, A, of the location where the game is, B, the event. I know they're 10-4, but to get into rarefied air right now, I mean I know they're not a favorite, but still they're going up against a team that a lot of people have them beating. I just think with all that added pressure, I think it might be a little bit too much for the Jags to come out on top of this one. I definitely see a turnover or two come from Trevor. I just think it's coming sooner or later. I like the D to make some plays. It's not going to be a high scoring affair by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the Broncos, the way they've been grinding out wins, it's probably going to be a 1 or 2 point win, maybe a field goal when all is said and done. But I do like the Broncos coming out on this. I think they're just built for it. And while I do like the Jags to do a little bit of work in the playoffs, that's a little bit away still. They still have the Colts to take care of at home next week. So the Colts are at home next week. But all said and done, I do like the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Brian. I'll be honest. To make my pick, I'm picking the Broncos in this one for 2 reasons. One, I've been burned too many times just convinced that somebody's going to come in and expose them to be the frauds that they are and all this kind of thing. That's just the way I felt about them, and they kept proving me wrong. Same with the Chiefs kept proving me wrong last year. If they keep getting these close wins, especially at home, then they're just going to keep getting these close wins, especially at home. Like that's just the vibe that they keep building. But secondly, I just think they were so impressive last year. What is probably the biggest win, not necessarily in terms of points, but in terms of consequence of their season last year. The real statement that they are trying to prove to the league that they are for real. That I just think it's almost too much it's too strong of a challenge for Jacksonville to go in and upset. Are you seeing it any differently?
Who would have thought when the guys were at Wembley watching the Jags and Rams that they'd be watching the inevitable Super Bowl this year, Shane? I do see it very differently. I've been high on this Jags team for quite some time. I think Kieran is slowly getting there, but he doesn't want to he's pumping the brakes slightly because he doesn't want to get caught up with the local community and what's all been said in the local parish and down the local GAA club. But there's something different about this Jags team, both offensively, defensively of late. And I get the concern around injuries, and they haven't got the two-headed monster, but they have got two-headed monster for me in the receiver game, because Morris has been a great trade. Bringing him in from the Raiders, he's really stood up and I wouldn't say he's overstepped Brian Thomas Jr. because Brian Thomas Jr. came back and had a really effective game last weekend. And if, as well as the Broncos have played this season, their secondary, and we talk about Surtain, if they go after the other cornerbacks, they're there to be exposed time and time again, flag after flag. I think they're one of the most penalised secondaries in the league. I think they can be got it. We've seen teams go in there, put big points up on them over the course of the season, including my Giants and Kieran's Giants. Last week, the Packers were on the right, looked like they were going in the right direction. Kudos to the Broncos last week because, as we touched on Monday show, Bo Nix stepped up last week. That was the coming of age game this season for Bo Nix. But for something tells me on Sunday, we're going to, we talk about all the games in which the Broncos have at home, and we say, who's going to knock them off? And everyone assumed it would be the Packers last week. No one's really given the Jags an opportunity. Cam Little has the longest field goal in the NFL history, 68 yards. Well, he could probably hit 70 in Mile High then on Sunday. So I think it's going to be a walk-off field goal victory for the Jags. And the Broncos have been on the right side of many of those this season. So this time around, it comes down to a late kick. And the Jags put a marker down in the league, because if they were to win on Sunday, people will start considering them seriously for the playoffs. It's a Jags victory for me.
That's a really, in fairness, Jazz Broncos is a really, really tasty matchup between a team in the AFC South and a team in the AFC West. Maybe a less tasty one because of the quality of one of those teams is the Las Vegas Raiders. They travel to the Houston Texans. When I was speaking to Ben in the AV Club this week, I was saying that out of all the teams in the AFC, other than the Broncos, who am I afraid of? I'm afraid of the Houston Texans. I think CJ Stroud is coming good at the right time. I think that defense, it's one of the best in the league in terms of pressure rates, one of the best in the league in terms of, points allowed, one of the best in the league in terms of touchdowns allowed. They're strong, they're physical, they're being coached well. And I think that as a team, the entire unit is coming to the boil at the right time. And they're facing against the Las Vegas Raiders. The less said about them, the better, I think. They were nilled, to use rugby parlance, again this year. I saw them score absolutely nothing in Arrowhead Stadium this year when I flew over to watch them in Kansas City. They scored absolutely nothing against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it wouldn't shock me if they scored absolutely nothing against this Texans team. That's just the way they've been playing, and I think the Texans will have this one nice and easy before they run into the season and start looking ahead towards whoever they will end up facing in the playoffs, as I'm expecting there will be. Brian?
The only reason this isn't in the quick pick, Shane, is because of the successful run in which you've seen with this Texans team. This is an absolute beatdown type of game. The line with QuinnBet is 14 points. This could be whatever the Texans wanted to be on Sunday.
Kieran?
Oh yeah, easy win for the Texans.
Well, let's talk about a big matchup between two 8-win teams living in the northern part of the country. The Pittsburgh Steelers, coming off the back of a Monday Night Football victory against the Detroit Lions, who gave up a lot of points in Los Angeles in what has become a rivalry game of the modern age. Their pride has been hurt in Detroit, Kieran. Lions are coming in as a 7-point favorites, probably by virtue of the fact of the nature of their talent, but the nature of the results and the grit, and even the way that the Steelers offense played at certain parts of the game on Monday Night Football is giving some hope that they might be able to keep it competitive. What way do you see this game going?
Well, I mean, I think that the spread is pretty accurate. I mean, this Lions team, while they have been inconsistent and they have had their issues on defense, they still lead the league in points per game at 30.6, and at home it's 33.7. So they know how to score, and this matchup is probably going to be determined by the weapons that the Lions have as opposed to what the Steelers are able to do. The Lions are slowly improving. The offense is, I don't want to say it's clicking again, because we've seen them be great, and then we've seen another week where they've been just, pedestrian. But, when the Lions are at home, that whole atmosphere, at Ford Field, it almost always feels like a playoff atmosphere there. I think the crowd really lend themselves. I know the Seahawks talk about their 12th man. I think the Lions really have the 12th man there in Motown. The question and the worry I have for this Lions team is the defense. I spoke about it last week. They lost Kirby. They lost Branch. They lost Amik Robertson. I think he's a question mark. So there's issues on the secondary. However, they're going up against a team that doesn't exactly light it up in the air with the Steelers. So I don't think they're going to be stung too much by that. For me, I mean, with the Lions on offense, we all know the weapons they have. And last week, Jameson Williams and St. Brown went up for ridiculous numbers. Not saying that's going to happen against the Steelers, but I think this, overall, I think this Lions team has got more than enough for the Steelers team, who, given their, I'll give them credit. They're scoring more points in the last couple of weeks. Rodgers has been, he's been not where he was, obviously, with the Jets, when he kind of turned it on last year and put up 4,000 and change, but he's doing all right. And the Steelers have scored 28 points or more in 4 of the last 5 games. So, offense, but again, we know a lot of those points come from Boswell and a lot of those come from defensive turnovers, but they've won over the Ravens. They beat the Miami Dolphins last week, which is really a non-contest, which led to a whole bunch of problems with Miami. But Rodgers is completing 75.4 of his passes and for 508 yards in those last 2 games. Still a question mark about TJ Watt. You have to wonder if he's able to go, or are they going to just put him in protective clothing and keep him good till the playoffs. they still have, Patrick Queen. They still have Jalen Ramsey on defense. So I'm not worried about them being able to get run over. But it's really, when you look at this Lions offense, when they start getting humming and they start, just revving, to put a Motown kind of acronym there. I mean, when this engine gets revving, I mean, they're frightening. And they don't mind getting into these shootouts, these 35, 40, 45 point games, because they know they got enough on offense to cover whatever the defense is not able to hold on to. And that's probably where the Steelers are going to fall short. While Gainwell and Warren put up over 100 yards last week, they may get close to that again, but it's just the weapons, which DK shows up. And we've seen Freiermuth be inconsistent as well as Washington too. So you just balance out the two weapons, and the Lions have more than enough, which is reason why the line is why it is. I think the Steelers also have suspect run D, which is also going to lead to Jahmyr Gibbs run up and down that field. So long story short, the Lions have too much on offense. They're going to ship a bunch of points too, probably, but they're going to have more than enough to cover that. It's probably going to be a 35-21 kind of game. So I like the Lions obviously at home.
Yeah, I'm looking at this game between the Steelers and Lions, and there's a lot of things that made me think that actually the Steelers might have enough to put together a win here, because the Lions are making mistakes when it comes to fourth down calls. I think the loss of both of their coordinators has hit in terms of the planning and what they've been able to do on both sides of the ball. We saw that in Los Angeles last week. The Steelers' offense has been good for over 27 points in 3 of the last 4. They were 3 of 3 in the red zone against Miami. That Miami defense isn't the worst in the league in the way that their offense is. That's not necessarily something we should be turning our nose up at. The problem is, though, and this is obviously after a game when the Steelers had 2 receivers who caught every ball that was targeted in their direction, which shows the accuracy of Aaron Rodgers and the fact that with Arthur Smith and everything that he's been working on, that offense is starting to build into the year quite nicely. But both Gainwell and DK Metcalf caught everything that was thrown in their direction. The problem is, though, they're very, very reliant on Aaron Rodgers having to play a good game. Every game they've won this year, Aaron Rodgers had an over 95 QB rating. When he goes below that 95 QB rating, they lose. It's that simple. And the problem is they're coming up against a team here who define themselves by physicality. Not 100% confident the Steelers' offensive line can hold up to the kind of physicality that Detroit will bring to this game. I don't trust Aaron Rodgers to, if he gets hit a couple of times early in the game, to still bring the sort of cognitive ability that he needs to run the quarterback system, because the quarterback system is being run on 2 assets, his brain and his arm, not his legs, not his strength, not his agility. And I think, considering, yes, they're playing against the Lions defense that has given up over 27 points in each of the last 4 games, they are playing against the Lions offense where Jared Goff has gone over 300 yards in back-to-back games. Both Gibson and Montgomery need a rebound game after the performance they put in last week against the Rams. This might be a good time to do it if that Steelers defense doesn't put in a lights-out performance. And it looks like the Lions have got too much going for them to drop this one. As well as that, the Lions have a greater need here. If the Lions lose here, their playoff hopes really start to go down, and they go down to a 35% rate as it is. Whereas the Steelers, they would like this one. They don't need it because their season really rests on what happens with the Ravens. The Ravens may still lose a couple of games. They still have to face off against each other later in the year. So I think the Lions have a greater need. They have greater speed. They'll have greater physicality. And I think they'll go and win this game. Brian.
Yeah, just very much kind of you echo what you said there. They've got to win out, the Lions essentially, by the looks of it. And for me, this feels like a playoff type of game for them. The Lions win this game on Sunday.
Right, we go to prime time after this.
This is Ireland. Rugged, wild, and endlessly captivating. A land shaped by history, where ancient castles whisper stories of the past. Where world-class links golf connects you to breathtaking landscapes. And where centuries of craftsmanship and culture are blended to produce world-class whiskies, savoured as music and laughter fill the air. But every journey with us is about people, place, and authentic experiences you'll never forget. This is more than a trip. It's the Dunes and Drams experience. Discover Ireland with us and make memories that will last a lifetime.
Of course, we couldn't have a broadcast without Connor's dulcet tones treating us, as we was also talking about earlier at the start of the broadcast about the trip that we will be doing. Make sure you go on irishnflshow.com/tours for details of that. And of course, talking about Do's and Drams and the great work we're doing with them. Our final segment, we're talking about Sunday Night Football here as the New England Patriots go up against the Baltimore Ravens. You know, my sleep schedule has been flexed now to try and affect this one. This game wasn't supposed to be given the NBC treatment, and now it is. I'll start in this one because all week I have had the Ravens in the win column for this one. I changed my mind this morning because I was just looking at a couple of different aspects of this, and is it harder over my head? I'm not quite sure. But I thought that this is obviously the most difficult period of the season that the Patriots have gone through in terms of strength of opponent. Not saying much, but it is true. The Bills, I thought the Patriots had enough against the Bills, a team that they generally match up well against. But in the second half, the Bills turned on Superman mode and we've shown up a big weakness to the Patriots in that if you have an offense that has the passing attack and the rushing attack in tandem, there aren't enough individual playmakers in the defense to stop things and make a difference. They work well as a unit. There isn't an individual game changer. So that makes you think, okay, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Derrick Henry. The formula is there for the Ravens to go and push forward and try to keep things tight, to keep things dangerous, and to do exactly what the Patriots don't necessarily stand up well against. But there's two things about the way that the Ravens play, which makes me think that they mightn't have necessarily either the mentality, the look, or the ability to properly circumvent a Patriots team that will be coming in refocused after getting their first loss after winning 10 in a row before the bye week. Firstly, we remember the last primetime game they played against the Bengals. You know, they were the better team, but they let things slip because of boneheaded plays, bizarre turnovers, bizarre drop, a bizarre drop by Isaiah Likely. The last game they played against the Steelers, Ravens fans will bemoan some bad refereeing calls, which did not go their way. That's fair enough. But again, there was, it was a ridiculous moment when Isaiah Likely just, didn't let a pass be complete. There's some other areas of the game when they just let things slip, which you can't plan for, you can't legislate for. But Lamar Jackson seems to be just letting these crazy things happen against him. Then, of course, you go back to week one when they were playing also on Sunday Night Football. When they played in a game they were clearly better than, but let one drop against the Bills. The Ravens just don't have, I don't think, the temerity to close out these games, which they really, really need to win against good teams. The Patriots, meanwhile, look, I think they got a big knock at their confidence, especially defensively, from the Bills on Sunday in Foxborough, and that one will sting. Where is the reaction coming from this team? You look at the leadership inside that group, I think we actually could see a good reaction. May is still wheeling and dealing. He's being able to rush in touchdowns, save the pass touchdowns. The Patriots have scored 24 points or more in 9 straight. And once the Ravens' rush defense is probably coming good at the right time, their offense just is not efficient enough. They're 2 of 7 on third down last week, even though they're playing against the Bengals, and they end up walking away with a pretty easy victory. So coming up against the Patriots, are they efficient enough? Are they going to last long enough without making a stupid mistake or something crazy happening, not in their favor against a Patriots team who will be physical, will be able to bring the offensive swagger. And look, let's be fair about this. Lamar Jackson isn't passing the ball. They're very much relying on the run game there. Derrick Henry's having to do a lot of the work. Lamar Jackson only attempted 12 passes last week, completed 8 of them, still managed to get sacked, I think, 3 times. That offense still hasn't clicked in a way that would make the Ravens as dangerous as you would normally anticipate. So for that reason, I'm going for the Patriots to win this one, but it really is a huge game. The Ravens are 3-point favorites, and probably for a reason. Brian, we go to you.
Shane. You're just striking all those favoritisms around. It's very clear that the fan in you is coming out. It's first of all, it's a great game. It's a great game for Sunday Night Football. It's a great game for people who are on their Christmas holidays. They can stay up late and watch this one on Sunday. It's rightly selected to be put in prime time. The Ravens are an intriguing proposition because it feels like last week was a get-right game, or this is the turning point in their season. It's weird to say that because there's not many games left in the season, but based on what we've said earlier, coming into Sunday Night Football, they'll know the results from Motown, and if on the basis that most people feel the Lions will have too much for the Steelers, it's all there for them. They win that game, they're tied in the AFC North. They're going to play the Steelers again come the end of the season. and what a huge game that'll be. But this game then takes even more kind of significance for them. Yeah, I understand what you're saying on Lamar. He hasn't been thrown it effectively as maybe we may have seen in other years, and Flowers really hasn't stood out this year. Bateman's been inconsistent, and Derrick Henry, to a certain extent, hasn't really played at the level. And yeah, here they are, a couple of games out from potentially winning the division. And something strikes me that come Sunday, this is the game that gets them right on track to be a serious contender in the playoffs. Because if they win this, it's not just about them DNRG winning it. It's about beating a team that up to last week looked like they could be a serious contender to be the 1 seed. And I thought last week was the opportunity for the Patriots, and everyone's playing for them to have a 21-0 window and find a way to give the game away, essentially, as well as the Bills played. That for me was a bit concerning, and that strikes me as we talk about Josh Allen, we talk about Lamar Jackson in that same kind of conversation, and that kind of gives me that feeling that Lamar is going to have a big game on Sunday. Mark Andrews, tight end's been quiet of late. I think he could step up on Sunday when they really need him, and fortunately for Pats fans, it could be a long night because I think the Ravens are on the right side. It's a Ravens victory for me.
Funny you're saying about it's a great late night game for people on their holidays. I'm in work Monday morning. Come on. I now have to come into my last day of work before Christmas, wreck tired. And will I be wreck tired after a Ravens win or a Patriots win, Kieran?
You're lucky you got some of that time off. I'll be working all the way up. Here's a couple of things. I mean, we covered a lot already. For me, I mean, obviously that Pats capitulation in the second half has got to get them worried. I'm not overly worried about them, heading into the playoffs. I'm more looking towards this Ravens team, and I just think, and I'm not going to say that they're kind of hiding in the grass because they're the Ravens and they're perennial kind of, if not Super Bowl favorites, and they're definitely making the playoffs. And the last 5 years that they've had championship games, conference games, divisional games where they've fallen short. I think Monken is cooking up something. I don't know what it is. I just feel like this team they've just been treading water. And I know Lamar was out for a lot of the time. So it's just like they were going through the motions and just making sure that they kept everybody healthy as much as they could. Henry hasn't really lit up the place. I know he had a big game last week, but you still have people like Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. You got playmakers, Isaiah Likely. And Lamar is a weapon with his arm and his legs. But for me, it's the defense. I mean, this Ravens team, they play a huge amount of man. They play single high safety. We talk about the Chiefs defense with Spags a lot. I mean, this defense keeps people guessing too. I just like where the Ravens are right now. I think they're going to win the division ahead of the Steelers regardless, but I just like where they are right now. And I like them to win this game. A, it's in Baltimore. B, this is to all intents and purposes, the playoffs starting right now for the Ravens because they haven't really got going. Lamar hasn't been around for a chunk of the season. This is the time to warm up. This is the time to start, looking at it like a 6-game season, a 7-game season, where it's basically win or go home. And that's that's the mindset that they're going to have. I know the offense has been sluggish lately, but I just, for some reason, I just feel like Monken is dialing something up. I feel like he's cooking something right now. And I'd be worried if I was playing the Ravens, not just the rest of the season, but even in the playoffs. I like where they're going right now. They're trending upwards for me, and I like them in this game. I like the Ravens. I think they're going to win at home.
It's interesting. Remember we were talking about the Bengals that what the AFC doesn't want is for them to be led into the playoffs. If they did get into the playoffs, to be very dangerous. The Ravens are very much in that space now. A lot of the fans of other teams are looking around and be like, whatever we do, we just do not want to let the Ravens in because we're afraid of them. We're afraid of what they can do. And I agree with you guys. I think like the Ravens could end up having a lot cooking here. Just be interested whether this is the game that they bring it out or whether it comes later on in the season. The last game of the week is Monday Night Football. It's funny. I think Philip Rivers has got 10 kids and they're going to be waiting for Santa Claus. But Philip Rivers himself is going to be waiting for the man coming from Santa Clara as the 49ers go to Indianapolis on Monday Night Football. 49ers 6-point favorites here. Understandable. They have a well-coached defense, even though they're missing a lot of pieces. They are quietly, and this is maybe a strength of schedule thing, but quietly still in the running to top the division. By the time we'll be coming in to this game, they'll know what the story is when it comes to how the Seahawks game is gone. Of course, we don't know what the story is here, but Kieran, I mean, everything's there for the 49ers to go in and try to keep their season and try to bump their record as much as possible, even though many of us will be hoping that Old Man Rivers will be able to show up a good performance, as he did in fairness against one of the league's best defenses last week in Seattle. Under the prime time lights, anything can happen. What way do you see this one going?
Well, obviously the River story is. I mean, it was great last week. Nobody saw that happening last week. Everyone thought the Seattle Seahawks would just put a beat down on them. But to his credit, that old magic kicked in. This is going to be a different proposition, though. I mean, this Niners team is they're just primed to. I talked about the Ravens a minute ago. This Niners team is getting everything back together again. Purdy's coming back. All the main weapons are coming back. Since week 5, they've converted a league high 40.6% of the third down. So that's the big difference. You see a lot of teams struggling to move the ball and struggling to get the ball downfield. But with the Niners, with the addition of Kittle and the rest of those guys coming back, it's just led to a more smooth kind of transition on offense. I know they've had a couple of easy games the last couple of weeks, and that's probably padded some stats, but they're trending in the right direction for me. And I think this Colts team coming in, I watched them 2 weeks ago. I watched them live capitulate against the Jags team, who were just feeling them out at the start. Devin Lloyd caught that pass, that interception from Jones, and that was it. The Colts kind of decided they weren't going to play that game in the rain. So Colts right now, I mean, with the way that the Texans are playing, you got to think the Colts are out of the running for the playoffs. And everything's looking better for this Niners team. Purdy last week he was great, 23 out of 30. I know it was the Titans, but still, you play who's put up against you. But I mean, it's for me, it's this Niners team is, I don't want to say lurking in the weeds again like the Ravens, but they're quietly putting stuff together too. This Colts team, while they still have Taylor and they still have a decent run D, I think the kind of deflating loss against the Jags and then obviously losing in the field goal to the Seahawks is taking the air out of their season, notwithstanding Jones going down too. I saw something about Richardson coming back on the bench. That's how desperate the situation is for quarterback in Indianapolis. I think it's going to be damage limitation. They're not going to say that they're keeping one eye on next season, but you have to think they're looking around. They've got a good nucleus. Again, I talked about the Panthers maybe maxing out. The Colts probably maxed out. Hell of a start. But with the injuries and time running out, I think it's going to be too much for them. The Niners, they're on the ascendancy. I know it's a road game for them, but I still like them to put up the numbers and to get this win. Colts, I just can't see it. It's going to be a Niners win for me.
Brian, we're going to see the Niners improve their record to 11-4.
Yeah, I believe so, Shane. If the Seahawks were to win the game on Thursday Night Football later this evening, and the Niners win out, the Niners will be the 1 seed. Like that's where we're at with this 49ers team. Like the permutations are very much there for them. I know they've got some difficult games, but I don't think this is probably the least difficult games of the 3 they've got left. Bearing in mind they've got the Bears at home, and then they got to play at home against the Seahawks in the final weekend of the season. Look, the Rivers thing was a great story last weekend. They didn't come out the right side of it. We've seen in the past where these little jumps that teams get from a particular player coming back from injury doesn't necessarily follow through until the next week, and people assume that'll be the case. I think ultimately on Sunday, on Sunday Night Football, was Monday Night Football?
Monday Night Football, yeah.
Beg your pardon. What we'll see is a 49ers defense that has really stepped up under Saleh again. Like you can see the same energy in which they're showing, even on the sideline after big plays, even last weekend against the poor Titans team. Saleh's pumped, the players are pumped, they're very much bought into what he's brought back to the organization. And I noticed, like Luke is suggesting, that their defense is a bit of a question mark, and maybe if Jonathan Taylor can get up to speed. But Kieran's called it out. Jonathan Taylor has regressed from what we've seen earlier in the season. And I think realistically, what we're seeing at the moment is a quarterback that can do game management at best. He's not going to be able to go toe-to-toe against this 49ers team. And I think Brock Purdy and Co will have a big night on Monday night, and the 49ers win and make things even more compelling for the last 2 weeks of the season. It's a big victory for me on Monday for the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm going for a victory for the 49ers as well, which of course will keep the NFC race nice and interesting for the rest of the season. Shout out, by the way, to Rory, Leisha and Luke for tuning in tonight and commenting. Great to see you guys engage with us. Thank you very much for listening. And thank to everybody who's listening to us on podcast form. We'll be back with an instant reaction on Sunday night as, of course, we lead into the last couple of weeks of the season. Who knows, the playoffs are just around the corner, but who's going to be there? Let's enjoy the drama from here on in and not wish our way into January. For now, thank you very much for listening to the Irish NFL Show.